Welcome to the Leslie Hawkins podcast. Each week, my guest and I discuss one pivotal moment in their life, what they learned from it, and their words of wisdom. Sometimes, the path you're meant to follow starts in the most unlikely place. For today's guest, it began on Christmas Day, watching football games on TV while the rest of the world celebrated the holiday. That quiet tradition sparked a love for the game that would shape the course of his life. His career started in university sports communications. It was steady, predictable, comfortable, until a tough conversation with his boss and a hard look at his friend's resume forced him to choose his path. The outcome? A remarkable career in sports broadcasting and an equally impactful career coaching youth football. Today, his impact has been recognized at the highest level with induction into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. This is a conversation about pushing beyond your comfort zone and leaning into your passion. Welcome to the Leslie Hawkins podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Please welcome today's guest, Farhan Lalji. So, Farhan is a senior reporter with TSN, the sports network. People always call it.
You gotta get that right.
I know. I was going to say people always call it the Toronto Sports Network, but it's not. Not at all. So he covers the Vancouver Canucks and the BC Lions and the Vancouver Whitecaps Football Club, amongst many other things. You've done Olympics, Grey Cup, Stanley Cups, and Super Bowls, including you have been obviously just back for the most recent Super Bowl in San Francisco. So glad that you're here. The other thing about you that I want to share is that you are a member of the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, and you were inducted in the media wing, one, for all of the work that you've done to help promote the Canadian Football League, but also all of your grassroots work in promoting football and being an incredible coach for, I'm going to say, a couple of decades now. So
At least.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. And the Hall of Fame was nice. And it's not nice because you want to be recognized as a Hall of Famer. It's nice because you get a chance to be further connected to an amazing group of people, right?
Exactly.
And so when you look at the Hall of Fame, not just the athletes, but people in the media wing, people that have been builders and things like that, like just to be associated with them is the real honor.
It is
so
amazing.
I've had football's been a huge part of my life, and my job is morphed. You mentioned all the things. I haven't done an Olympics since 2012. I've done 5, and I love doing them, but I haven't done them since because my job is kind of morphed, and it's now about 70% probably all things football.
Okay.
NFL, CFL, NCAA. And probably about 30% Canucks. Okay. Whereas before I would do the Stanley Cup and other things. Now it's just the Canucks, which is probably all I can handle of hockey right now when, with all the football responsibilities that are there. So it's kind of morphed into the dream job. I mean, it's always been the dream job, but even more so because the network has now decided to take advantage of where my passions lie even more.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that. It doesn't feel like work,
So
and
good.
18 Super Bowls later, here we are.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty impressive. I love it. So you and I have, we've met each other years and years ago. I don't even remember when, but we've always stayed in contact.
So I'll tell you the story.
Okay.
So you were working for Adidas.
Yes.
Not just working for, but like a high-level executive at Adidas. And Jim Popp, who at the time was the GM of the Montreal Alouettes, we know each other well. Yep. And so I was out playing golf, and I broke my 5-iron on the golf course. Right. So I took a picture of it and posted it, and Jim said, "You need a new sponsor," and he tagged Adidas. And next thing you know, we were connected. And then I got a bunch of stuff sent over, and every time I needed something, Leslie took care of me. So that's how it happened. It was bad golf that led to it.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for coming. So this podcast is all built on one question, which is, what is one pivotal moment in your life? And the reason I chose that question is, one, it is a really universal question. Everyone's had multiple pivots, some small, some big, some chosen by them, and some imposed on them. And I found that there are times when you go through those pivots where you can feel like you're on top of the world, but you can also feel like you're in the basement. And so what I wanted to do was provide a platform for people to come and share their stories so the audience can meet incredible people like yourself, understand the stories, but then also learn from them and learn from their experience. So that's what we're doing here today. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate the chance to tell the story because I think it's a valuable one. Not mine, but just the question as a concept, I think is valuable for people to know because sometimes you don't know what those pivot points or turning points are in your life until well after the fact.
Exactly.
I certainly didn't.
Right.
And there's been a few, I know we talked earlier about what they were. And after the call, I went back and thought about, even other pivots that might have happened when I was younger. And, simply as from coming from Africa to Canada when I was 4 and coming as an immigrant. Obviously that's a world change, life change, everything. And then, there was one that I don't think we talked about, and that was playing high school football. And not because it was high school football, because so many people get a chance to do that, but I had to transfer schools into a district, into a catchment area that allowed football. And I went through a process to do that. And then I met the head coach of the football program at Burnaby Central, who recently passed away, and he was my mentor.
Oh.
And so I played a couple of years of high school football for him. And then after that, I didn't want to lose his influence in my life. And it was as simple as that. So I started coaching. And I just wanted, and I love the sport. So I wanted to be around the sport. I wanted to continue to be around him. And then, I coached with him for probably about 13 or 14 years and until about 2000, until about 98, 99. And then he retired.
Okay.
But we still maintained a relationship till his passing. And, eventually I started my own football program at New Westminster in 2003, and he was around. Like, he didn't help coach, but he came and he took pride in what we were doing and just was there to listen and always had a different perspective. And had I not had that moment of wanting to play, and then so much so that I wanted to transfer schools to get there, like, none of that happened. And football has been such a huge part of my life, like literally since that day.
That's incredible.
Whether it be, going to practice as a coach or as a player and just being involved in the game, it's completely defined who I am on so many levels, right? So that was one, and I didn't know it at the time.
Yes.
Then, another one was when I was at Simon Fraser. So I worked at Simon Fraser I attended Simon Fraser, and then I worked there as the sports information director from 91 to 94. And at the time when I took the job, I had in my mind 3 years and get out.
Okay.
Like 3 years, build as many contacts as you can, and get the next thing. Like, just move on to the next thing. I think I got paid like $24,000 for the year, right? Like, it was an internship at the time. And, but I loved it. And I love the atmosphere, and I love just being around it, because when you're in an athletic department, and that department's a disaster right now, by the way. So but back then it wasn't. It was, it was thriving and growing. And, every fall, all the kids would come onto campus, and there was just that new energy, and with that, and I was still coaching, and it was a really, really good time in my life. And 3 years came around, and I'd made a ton of contacts, but I never really thought I could get into the television industry or anything like that. When I was going to school, I thought maybe I'd wind up doing media relations. Well, I was doing that at SFU. Okay. So why change? And I probably could have been comfortable staying there for the rest of my life.
Yes.
I really could have, and been somebody who would have retired there as a faculty member at the university, and all the benefits that come with that kind of retirement package and all those things.
Yes.
And then one day in my third year, our athletic director, Lauren Davies, and Lauren was an old school football coach. Okay. Right, who was the school's first coach and athletic director in the late 60s when the university opened. And he kind of administered and, was the boss like he coached. Yes. Very fire and brimstone, right? We used to joke about the number of Fs you had in a meeting when you came out of it, right? So one day we were waiting. We were there in the evening, and we were waiting for the score sheet to come in from the visiting school, because one of our basketball teams was playing out of town, and we were just waiting for it to see how they did and everything like that. So we were waiting by the fax machine, because that's what we did then. We didn't get it online.
Right, yeah.
So Lauren was by the fax machine. It came, and he's looking at it. And I'm just like I got to write a story based on this, and I got to get going, right?
Let's go.
So I went over to him, and he was still looking at it. And I didn't snatch it out of his hand, but I kind of put my hands on the paper.
Yes.
And took it and, you know, and he kind of let it go and gave it to me and started to work. I started working, and he came up to me after, and he tore a strip off me. And he said, "That is the rudest thing I have ever seen in my life," with a bunch of
not so great
words attached to it. And he said, "I want you to go home, and I want you to stay home for the next 3 days, and I want you to think about what you did, and I want you to come back and talk to me." Right? And I was shaken. Like, I was in my early 20s, and I thought, I can't work for this man.
No.
Like I said, you know, like, it wasn't about fear of getting fired. I'm like, I can't work for this man. And I really admired him.
Yes.
And so I came back, and at that point I thought, okay, my first goal was 3 years and get out.
Yes.
And that was 3 years. And I said, I got to get out.
Yeah.
And I got offered a job, and it was a leap, and I took it.
Okay.
In radio, producing a radio show. And shortly after that happened, you know, like after that meeting, everything was good with us, and I was still working there for a few months. And I took the other job, and he called me in and said, "I want you to know something. That conversation I had with you was on purpose."
Oh.
Yeah, he said to me that I could, and I never told him I was upset about it.
Yes.
Right? I just came back in. I was humble, contrite.
Yeah.
You know,
apologize.
in my mind, I knew what I was going to do, and I was going to be out. And when I accepted the other job, he said to me, he said, "I could see you were getting comfortable here. And I felt that you had so much more to give, and you weren't going to achieve it here.
Amazing.
So I pushed you."
Okay.
And he had no idea how I felt the way I did.
Yes.
And I was like floored.
Yeah.
That he knew.
Yes.
And we stayed close to the day he passed. You know, I spoke at his funeral. I was close with his wife. I'm still close to his sons, his grandson. Huge mentor. And I didn't know it at the time. But that was such a pivot point in my life.
Exactly.
Because I could have stayed at the school forever.
Right.
And probably the third one was a little funnier, because the guy that's at the center of it hates when I tell it. So there's a football coach named Jeff Reinbold, who's actually just with us at Super Bowl. He is back in the CFL. He spent the last 2 years working at the University of Hawaii. Spent a long time in the CFL, and before that, a long time coaching everywhere, all over the United States, NFL Europe, all these different places. And so one day, mid-90s, when I was doing this radio show, he and I got to know each other. We became really good friends. We were going to go out for a drink one day. And I was really going back and forth, because my two passions were media, which I was just getting into. And I had just transitioned from that radio job to a television job, and coaching, because I was still coaching high school football. And I'm like, what do I want to do here? Yeah. Because if I coach and I do it right and I hit it, like, it could be generational wealth. Yes. Right? But the media thing was kind of working in a good direction, and I just didn't know where to go. And so I went to the Lions facility. We were going to go out for some beers. He went to the restroom, and I was at his desk, and I looked at his desk, and he had his resume, because every coach has their resume ready to go. And he had been coaching in like 8 or 10 different places in 8 or 10 different years in some of the tiniest podunk towns in America. And I looked at this resume, and I thought, I don't want this life for a family I don't even have yet. Right. And I thought, let's just try this TV thing for a while. And that is, I'm not going to say I regret it, but I do look back and wonder what could have been. What could have been. But that was kind of like, looking at that made me decide, okay, go here instead of going here. And I tell him that all the time, and he's been everywhere. And he loves every bit of every experience that he's had, even if it wasn't generational wealth. Right. It was enrichment, right? Okay. He's coached in Europe. He's coached, like, you know, he now does TV in the CFL offseason. He does work for media in England. I think he's working for an Irish station right now. And like, he was working for Fox or for Sky. And now, anyway, so he spends part of his time there. He spends part of his time in Hawaii, which is home. He spends part of his time in Canada. He's got a great life. Yes. So, so I do look back at that one a little bit, but those are kind of the big pivot points for me.
Those are big pivot points. So when you came here, where did the love of football come from? Because most people who come to Canada lace on the skates and it starts hockey, and then maybe later it morphs into something else.
You know, I saw the hockey piece and thought, okay, this is cool. I wouldn't mind doing it, but I kept asking my parents, and they kept saying no. Okay. Right? Money, morning practices, all of the above. They didn't get it. You know, you're immigrants from Africa. You understand soccer. So they put me in soccer. Okay. And you know, one of the things when you're an immigrant, you don't, and you're a first generation immigrant, and sometimes your parents are very faith based. There's certain things that you're excluded from.
Yeah.
So I didn't have Christmas.
Okay.
So, you know, like right now, everybody's included in Christmas. But back then, like if you weren't Christian or Catholic, you just felt Christmas wasn't for you.
Yes.
And that's how my parents felt about it. So on Christmas, you know, in the Christmas season, when I was in elementary school, I got to take part in everything. You did Christmas carols, you did Christmas plays, you did the arts and crafts. You made Christmas cards, you did all of that. But on December 25th, I got nothing. I got a lump of coal.
Right.
And I don't mean that to say, you know, no one's feeling sorry for me. Like life's good. But there were 2 college football games that were being played on Christmas Day. So my Christmas consisted of watching these football games.
Amazing.
And then I just kind of developed this fascination for this game and these gladiators and all these pads and these, you know, these athletes and the flow of it. So, you know, a passion for it really came when I was, you know, 6, 8, 10 years old, or not, probably not 6, but 8 or 10 years old. And then I remember watching Warren Moon. Warren hates when I tell the story because it makes him feel old. And I know Warren, he's a good guy. But I tell him, I'm like, you know, like the first college football game I remember was you in the Rose Bowl in 1978. I would have been 10 at the time. And, you know, I'd watch these games because the games that were on Christmas Day were all-star games.
Okay.
They didn't involve a team specifically.
Yes.
So anyway, and then, I fell in love with the game. And I remember every U.S. Thanksgiving telling my mom I was sick because there were college football games that day. And I didn't want to go to school that day. So she'd let me stay home and I was sick. And I would watch Oklahoma play Nebraska and, you know, these big college games. Right. And it didn't dawn on her that there was a holiday in the United States and something else was going on. So, truly it was a result of being a kid that didn't have Christmas.
Okay.
And so I watched these games and it just developed a love. And then when I had the opportunity to play, finally, like, you know, I took it and there we went.
And you played in high school?
Played in high school, played junior football. And and then just, you know, while I was playing junior football, I was starting to coach, and eventually I kind of got more out of the coaching than I did out of the playing. You know, I had the dreams everybody else did to, you know, I want to play in college and want to play in the CFL, but I don't know that I had the work ethic or understood what it was supposed to look like.
Okay.
You know, you just thought, oh, they come find you because you really like the game, and it's kind of not really how it works, right?
It's not how it works. Yeah.
So with my own son, who's got his own football passions, I know what it looks like, and am trying to give him everything he can to pursue his dreams because they involve some of the same things.
Right. So how did you get into coaching? Because it's not necessarily an instant flip.
Yeah, like I said, it was more just wanting to be around Coach Reed.
Okay.
You know, so I graduated in '86, and in that fall, I was at Douglas College. You know, and I knew I wanted to get to Simon Fraser eventually. I wanted to go to university eventually. And I was playing junior football, which was fine, but I just felt like that influence was missing.
Yes.
So then the following year in '87, I went back and said, look, can I help coach? Yeah. I've got evening practices. I can, you know, I'm at school at Douglas. I can come down here. I can help coach, you know, until 5, and then I can go to my own practice. So I started doing that. And it just stuck. Like I've just not stopped.
You just love it.
Yeah. And I mean, even, you know, we've moved a little bit so that my son can kind of pursue what he wants to do. So I'm not a head coach anymore because that just is going to take too much time. I need to be. I also came to a time in my life where you know, you talk about a pivot point.
Yes.
I'm coaching at New Westminster. It's 2019, and we were in the playoffs. And you know, when I coached, like you had to be on time, right? And I had to set that example and be on time. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm talking a lot, even by my standards. So I had to go pick up my son because a lot of times he was at an elementary school in Burnaby, and a lot of times I would take him to practice.
Yes.
I'd pick him up, go drive down the hill to practice, and then he'd either stay for practice and come home with me, or my wife would come by at some point and pick him up. And so, you know, and I was feeling a level of burnout, but I didn't necessarily want to acknowledge it to myself. And, you know, knew the kids were getting to a point where I needed to be a little more present, but didn't want to acknowledge it to myself because I'd built this program, you know, 18 years, and I wasn't ready to walk away from it. And, you know, we just recently won championships, and it was such a cool thing. So I'm picking my son up from his elementary school, and he's not coming out. and now traffic is building up. And I'm at the side and I'm waiting for him and he's not coming out. And I'm getting angry and I'm getting angry and I'm getting angry. And now there's cars in front of me boxing me in, and then there's a little accident. So now it's going to take me even a little bit longer to kind of get to where I need to go. And the school that I'm coaching at is only 5 minutes away, but I got to get out of here to get there.
Yes.
So he finally gets into the car and I yelled at him.
Yeah.
And he was 7th grade and he's like, Dad, the teacher gave the whole class a detention. So it wasn't his fault. It wasn't him getting a detention. It was the whole class.
I get it.
And I was yelling at my own kid so that I could race down the hill to be on time for a group of other kids that weren't mine.
Yes.
And that was another pivot point. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of out of balance here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
thought about it a lot. And at the end of that year, I decided I'm going to step down.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was that.
Yes.
So.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
though.
it was like at that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of out of balance here.
Right. As parents, there is always that moment. I have lots of those moments. The one that my son reminds me of the most was when he was playing soccer. He was playing rep soccer. I left work early, went to go pick him up. We get to the soccer game and they got thrashed, like absolutely thrashed. And they weren't having a winning season anyhow. But he got in the car and I ripped him. And I said, it's one thing for you to play rep soccer and everything that goes into it. But if I don't see the effort on the field, then I'm not leaving work early. We're not playing this game. And it was all about him just not putting in the right amount of effort.
So how do you determine effort? And I had the same moment. Mm-hmm. How do you determine the difference between effort and success? Like when they don't have success, you assume they're not making an effort.
Right.
And it's for me, it's funny because I used to have the same conversations with. Now Luke always put in a lot of effort.
Yes.
And so he was a young hockey player. He was a really good hockey player. And then there were some, as he got older and started playing on better teams and moving to, the private clubs and doing all of this, the success wasn't there as readily because everybody was really, really good.
Really good. Yeah.
And so there were times where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing out there?
Yeah.
And so like you try to wrap your head around equating success versus effort.
Yeah.
And, I could see he kind of got to a point where he used to score a ton of goals at one stage of his life. And then when he got to these better teams, he was just so happy to make the team, and he would barely make the team. Yeah. He would always make the top teams, but he would barely make the top teams, right? So now your role is different.
Yes.
And so he just didn't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And you can see that in his game.
Being super careful.
Yeah. And I'm just like, dude, you got to just play.
Yeah.
And maybe I needed to just shut up and let him have his own, and if the best part about it was just not making a mistake and celebrating the victory afterwards in the locker room, then that was enough. But I think there were times where I was probably critical and equated, a lack of goal scoring success with, and so, yeah, it's weird because now I've got my daughter and I've had a complete do-over.
Yeah.
So I'm changing everything about how I message and like it's, and it's great. It's been great for our relationship because she was never in team sports until about 2 years ago, and she's 13 now, and she was always riding horses. I had no connection to that.
Right.
Like I loved her watching her do it, but going to horse riding thing meant like 2 hours before and 2 hours after of barn life, and that's just not for me. Right? I'm not meant to be in a barn. Yeah. But she got into team sports. Now she calls me every minute, like practice ends, she'll call me, "Oh, Dad, practice was like this," and it's good. And so I've just kind of changed how I message all of it.
Yes.
So that but like I had to make some mistakes with him to make fewer mistakes with her.
Oh no, I totally get it. Yes. So, yeah, and in my particular case, my frustration with my son was like
he wasn't wearing Adidas.
He was exactly. He's like he wasn't working hard enough.
Yeah.
Like it was more of we're making all this effort to get you where you want to be, for then you to kind of mail it in. I don't care if you let in 10 goals. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the score. I care about like how much work you're actually putting into it. But then after that, he was like, yeah, I think I'm probably done with playing soccer.
Too much pressure from mom.
Yeah, I know. Crazy mom. Yeah. So I've learned after that. I was like, I I actually just need to sit on the sidelines and just be quiet.
There's this site on Instagram called 6 a.m. Practice. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
And they've got some really cool posts for athletes to look at to just understand what working hard looks like. And then there's a post in there about parents and kids and what the contract is for both of you, right? And parents need to understand that you're not living through them. You're not, doing this. And kids have to understand that your parents are investing a lot and they want to see an effort and they want to see you try. And they, you can't, if they're going to put in all this money for you to play on this team, you can't sleep in. You can't, you can't look for excuses not to be there and put in your time. So it is a bit of a two-way street.
It is.
And, we're the people that should have the experience to understand what our end of the street is. They always say youth is wasted on the young. Yeah. Right. So whereas they don't get it quite, and I remember my godson having this conversation with him and his dad. So Matthew and Roy, cameo, you're being shouted out here.
Yeah.
And Matthew was really into hockey. And Matthew was a lot like Luke in that he was kind of the last kid to make the top team. And hockey is insane, right? Where you like spring hockey and there's just so much money and there's so much investment. And Roy would be putting a lot of this stuff in and he would love watching his kid play and they would be having these battles about what you should be doing. And he would kind of get annoyed because dad was telling him what to do. And dad would kind of get annoyed because he wasn't necessarily trying hard enough. And so I kind of had the conversation with both of them that, look, these are his dreams, not yours.
Right.
And he's investing in you and you've got to recognize that. And you can't just kind of do it halfway. And so, he's like 25 and married and now a successful realtor. So hopefully he learned a lot from all those sports experiences.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Oh, well, sports does teach you a lot.
It does.
Definitely. So when you were at SFU, then you were interning.
Yeah.
And then what moved you into media? Where was your love for media? Where did that come from?
Well, I don't know that I ever necessarily had a love for it that way. Like I didn't grow up wanting to be a broadcaster, but when I first got into university, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Right. Like I left high school. I thought, it might be a good idea to try to be an engineer. Okay. And I went to Douglas College and I didn't have the grades at the time to get into university right away. Actually, sorry, I had the grades. I didn't have the language requirement.
Okay.
Anyway, so I went and I looked up what the course load would be like if I wanted to get into engineering. And it was a ton of math, which wasn't my jam.
Okay.
So I thought that's probably not going to work for me. So I just thought, okay, just get your grades to a point where you can get into university and figure it out because most people change majors when they get to university.
Right.
So I did that. I got in after 3 semesters and then I walked into the student employment center at the university and they had a posting there for the sports information director job, which was an internship at that time.
Okay.
So you would do 8 months doing all the media relations for the school and then you do 4 months working for Labatt's, doing a bunch of their summer events and things like that.
How good is that?
And I know. And so I started building my resume thinking eventually I wanted that internship and job. And then I majored in communications because it seemed interesting for some of the things that were out there. And again, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. At that time, I thought I was going to play football at the university too, which didn't work out. And so eventually I got the sports information position. And then when I got it, they took the internship part of it away and they made it a full-time job. Oh. So I was doing that in the off season as well. I didn't get the Labatt opportunity, but it was still, it was good.
Yeah.
And I had interned in that department before. And then in that time, I got to meet a lot of media.
Yeah.
You reach out to all of them on a regular basis. Hey, listen, you should be profiling this athlete.
Right.
We've got a game today. You got to come up and, shoot the highlights. And back then there were a lot of local media and a lot of local stations and they were receptive.
Yes.
I remember when the women's basketball team just kind of caught fire. And they were this group of girls from around every corner of the province. So good. And for whatever reason, they just resonated with a lot of the local media. And everybody wanted to cover them. Alison McNeil was the women's basketball coach. Jay Triano was the men's basketball coach. And Jay used to give me grief because the women got more press than the men did. And it wasn't really a men-women thing. It was just, for whatever reason, one girl from Invermere, one girl from, pick a spot. Like they were Hope. They were from everywhere. They all kind of got together and, they were a group of really engaging girls. They were totally successful.
Amazing.
And they would get more press than the football team. You know, the wrestlers are putting kids in the Olympics. They got more press than the wrestling team.
Yeah.
So I got to know all of these media because they wanted to, I would give them all these ideas and they would say, no, what's the women's basketball team doing? So
You're like, wait a second.
yeah, and then they would come and, you know, it was very organic and it exploded.
Yes.
And so I got to know all of these people. But at that time, I didn't really feel that there was an entry point into the media. You know, usually if you want to get in the media, at that time you would go to BCIT.
Okay.
Or in Toronto, you would go to Ryerson.
Ryerson, yeah.
And then eventually you would co-opt out at
Yeah.
the end of your academic, you know, your last semester or whatever. And then you'd
Right.
get a job with whoever you co-opted with. And you'd
Yes.
be living in Dawson Creek. And you'd eventually try to find your way back to the big
Yeah,
city. And it might
right.
work, it might not. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go
No.
up there. You know, even though people like Don Taylor romanticize about their time in these towns, Fort St. John or wherever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had these stations. Everybody had jobs
Yes.
in them. They didn't look like they were going anywhere.
Right.
We didn't look like new stations were coming in. So I
Yes.
thought and nobody looked like me.
All right.
Right. So I didn't know if there was a place for me. You know, so then I saw Ian Hannah-Mansing,
Yeah.
who works for CBC, and I thought, okay, well, he kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
And representation does matter.
It
For people that say
totally
it
matters.
doesn't, like
Oh.
the people that say it doesn't weren't on this side of it.
Yeah.
Representation matters.
It totally matters. Yeah.
And so in the end, I thought I would wind up getting into media relations or PR or something like that because I just couldn't see myself getting one of those opportunities, right? Because they were locked in. And then
Yes.
it just kind of happened that in '94 I left to do this radio job, which lasted 9 months.
Okay.
And then the station made a format change.
Oh.
So we all lost our jobs. Now in our industry, we call that freelance, right? So
That's a good spin.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, for 7 to 9 months, I was just freelancing.
Yes.
And then Barry McDonald, who was, you know, a mentor of mine, who I got to know during my SFU time and liked the work I was doing on the radio, said, hey, listen, I'm going back to Sports Page.
Okay.
We're going to need another person here in the sports department.
Okay.
So they offered me a job, and I assumed it was a sports job. And the news director says, no, we'd like you to read the news.
Oh.
And total diversity hire before there were ever diversity hires.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
realize it at the time, but then
Yes.
it kind of clicked. Like,
But
how does a guy
hindsight.
that's never taken a broadcasting course, has never read a teleprompter,
Right.
get asked to anchor the weekend news?
Wow.
So Karen Larson was in the sports department, and Eric Dwyer. So those are the two people that were there, and they kind of, you know, took me in and taught me television. There was an editor named Rod Mundy who taught me a lot about television, and I just kind of learned and continued to meet people. And then, so I would be anchoring the weekend news, and then I'd be reporting on sports during the week.
Okay.
And it was, you know, not normal to get a job, not just at a local station, but at the CBC.
Yeah.
Right, as your first television job. And
That's big.
if I ever showed you the tapes of the first shows that I did, I was awful. You know, you sounded like you were reading, you know, and then eventually you kind of learn to just relax a little bit
Yes.
and get better at it. And then, and it kind of worked out where I knew the executive VP at TSN in charge of news. I had gotten to know him, and they were going to open up a broadcast center in Vancouver, which we only had for 2 years, but it was, I think, 97. So in July of 97, the CBC canceled their weekend news locally across the country.
Okay.
But I knew that in August I was taking this job with TSN. So I didn't have to freelance long there, maybe a couple of weeks. And then got hired at TSN. And it was at that time that the Vancouver Grizzlies came.
Yes.
And actually, when I was at CBC, the Grizzlies came. And
Okay.
Sportsnet was starting, and like all these, and you know, there were other stations. So the market kind of opened up really briefly.
Yes.
For about a 5-year period, from maybe 95 to 2000.
Yes.
Then it closed up again, but by that point I was in.
You were in.
So
Okay.
yeah, and then it just kind of went from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember the first day watching actually Sportsnet, like actually come on the air.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that before. It was quite unique. But TSN has always been like, if the TV's on in our house, it starts with TSN, right?
As it should.
Like, okay, what sports are on? And, you know, if there's nothing on of interest, then we'll go and we'll find, you know, some drama or something to watch. But it always starts with sports. So what's your life like now? And like, what is it like in the media? Because from the outside looking in, it's kind of cool. You just came back from a week in San Francisco and at the Super Bowl, and you're around all these amazing athletes and you're having these great conversations. But that's probably the romantic side of it. What's it actually like in the sports media?
Well, it's all of those things.
Okay.
But it's work.
Okay.
Like it's work too, right? I mean, the amount of time I spend consuming information so that I can speak with authority is extensive, right?
Yes.
And you know, when I left coaching, it was important to me that I was present. I wanted to be more present for my family. That when I'm there, I'm actually there.
Yes.
But for me, there's still a lot of times where I just, you know, I can't watch every NFL game, but I watch extended highlight packs and read reports and, you know, and you're consuming all the information. And then on the CFL side, I also have an insider role where I'm there to kind of mine information. So I'm constantly talking to general managers and agents and players and other people around. So, you know, there's just a constant need to be informed and consume information. Like I go for a walk with my dog, I've got a podcast in.
Yes.
Right. And it's whether it's a Canuck podcast or an NFL podcast or a Seahawk, you know, because I'm going to cover a Seahawk game that week or whatever it happens to be. So that part of it is real. Like you do have to prepare.
Yes.
It's not just showing up and kicking it. Like
Right.
when you show up, you're able to sound comfortable because you've prepared.
Yes. Okay.
And so that's important. And my job is not a desk job. So I love that part about it. I get to go out and I get to meet people. I get to interact. I get to cover live events. In some cases, they're historical events, right? Like you get to go where, you know, people will remember that event. And you were there watching it live, right? Like I remember when the David Tyree catch happened to prevent the 17-0 Patriots. And I was like literally on the 20-yard line, right there, aligned to it as it was happening.
So
right. So, you know, just to get to see some of those moments and, you know, watching Usain Bolt run at the Olympics and watching the Dream Team lose for the first time at an Olympics and, you know, all of those things along with, you know, all the Grey Cups and the hockey and, you know, the 13th man at the Grey Cup and all of those types of things. It's cool to be a part of all of that.
Yes.
But there is a lot of preparation that goes into it so that you can, you can speak with a level of competence.
Right.
Yeah. And the logistics of travel affect people differently, right?
Yes.
And actually, I'm really sour. I didn't get access this year on Air Canada to get into the lounge for the first time in my life. I'm like,
you're like, what's happening?
Right. And when you have a connection, that matters. Like I know people, I get it. It's a first world problem, but that was a real difficulty for me. Like you want to go, you can be in comfort, you can read, you can work, you can get more information. And so like, but anyway, for the most part, people tell me like, I'm 57. I don't know how you travel as much as you do. And I don't find it difficult. And,
it's just what you do.
Yeah. And for me, it's always concentrated into certain periods of time. I'm just ending one of those now with the Super Bowl. I don't have to go anywhere again until the end of March. Okay. So it's not always, but when it does happen, I don't have an issue with it. It's good. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And you get to see and talk to all kinds of interesting people, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How is the relationship between the teams and the players and the media? Like, are they relatively open to share information? Like being an insider is really hard.
That's a tough question because it depends on the team and sport and the player.
Okay.
I'm really struggling with the hockey team here.
Okay.
I think post-COVID, it's been a real challenge. Athletes have changed. Watching it from the inside with my son going through relatively high-level minor hockey until he was 13, you see what causes it because there's so much money involved. It leads to a level of entitlement. So being around this team has been difficult the last few years for sure. Okay. But you know, you're on CFL players and there's anything but entitlement because they're not making millions and millions. Right. So they want the coverage and they want to treat you a certain way. And it's great. And, you know, and I find the NFL athletes really good to deal with too. And there's certainly a different financial piece there, but it has changed a little bit for sure, you know, and I think athletes struggle with separating media from social media. Yes. Right? Because they generally can't get off it, and that's where they take the bulk of their criticism.
Correct.
And I've had this conversation with like Jim Rutherford, the president of the Canucks, and you know, like there's players that just can't separate the two, and they when they get criticized there, they don't know how to turn off their mentions, and they get criticized here, and they view us as being the people that are criticizing them, right? And I'm one that asks hard questions. I think that's part of the job. Yes. I understand that sports is the candy aisle of media. But
the candy aisle of media. I love that.
But for me, like I still think there's a a time and place to ask a difficult question. Like if
Absolutely.
a player is struggling and you're making millions, you're allowed to ask him about his struggles. If
Right.
you are, he doesn't have to get personal, like, and give you his family history or anything like that, but those are fair questions to ask.
Yes.
And, if a player or a coach or somebody is involved in something or their family's involved in something that, is questionable or untoward, you're allowed to ask those questions, right?
Yes.
I think it's allowed. Like that's what fans want to know. That's what people want to know. I'm not into clickbait. I don't work for a network whose business model is based on clickbait, right? Like I work for a traditional television company, right? So,
Yes.
now there's way less media than there ever was. So when I think back to the media that covered the 2010 Canucks or the 2011 Canucks, it's wild. Like big boy media.
Yeah.
Guys that had huge platforms and weren't afraid to just shred you.
Yes.
And now it's not like that. Most of the people we have are young bloggers that are afraid to lose their credentials. So there's a small number of us that are willing to ask difficult questions.
Yes.
And then when you do, then people get taken aback because these people aren't willing, and then there's so much team media, right? Like for the Canucks, they've got their own, people that handle their social media and their own production team and everything like that. So those content creators are only going to ask fluffy stuff. They're not going to ask difficult. So if you're a player, you get so much of this, then when something actually relevant comes, you don't know how to deal with it, right? So there is a bit of that here. I don't see as much of it in the United States because there still is more traditional media there. But you asked me the question, like media at large.
Yes.
I think it's an awful time to be in this industry.
Oh.
Because it's shrinking by the day.
Yes.
Right? And like post media, the Sun and the Province don't even travel to anything. They don't travel to Canuck away games. That would have been unheard of 5 years ago, pre-COVID. But COVID gave a lot of people a reason to cut their budgets and just be out. So the industry is shrinking, especially in this country.
Yes.
So, when I talk to young kids about what to do, like, my thing to them is don't try to be a reporter, go be a content creator.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Like you've got to be able to do more than what I do because what I do is shrinking, right?
Okay.
There's, in sports, there's always going to be a need or a desire for people to provide live sports content, right? Like games are always going to be popular.
Correct.
And people are always going to need to present them. But how you consume information around that product has changed tenfold,
Right.
especially since COVID, right? So, you're now seeing games streamed on Netflix and Amazon, and it's
so
entirely
crazy.
different, right?
Yes.
So, and those games look the same, but it's still different mediums and different ways of getting into it. But like, you look in the States and what's happened there, with the whole concept of fake news and all the silliness around that. And, what just happened to the Washington Post and their sports department and CBS, what's happening with, just buy it, change the content and create state-run media, right?
Right.
And so it's a difficult time. There was a time when you could be an international correspondent and you were safe.
Yes.
Like you could go to a conflict in the Middle East, and if they knew who you were safe. You were not getting shot.
Right.
Now you're getting shot in your own country.
Right.
Right? I mean, not here, but across the line. So
Yes.
it's a difficult time to be in this industry.
Absolutely. So I'm sure part of it is that you're grateful, at least, that you're in it. You've had a great career and continue to have a great career in it. Plus, you're in sports. Like people love sports. Fans are immensely passionate. I'm curious, when you mentioned be a content creator as opposed to a reporter, what does a content creator look like in your world? Because I think people define it differently.
Yeah, no, and it's fair because everybody wants to be an influencer, right?
Yes.
And every kid wants to be an influencer.
They want their career that way.
Yeah, and some of it is targeted, but so much of it is random in terms
Yes.
of what hits. And it's so hard to predict that. I mean, I'm sure there are sociologists out there that can predict human behavior and, can have it down to a letter, but I think it's difficult. But I just think you've got to be able to operate on multiple platforms, right? And multiple platforms require different things of you. And for me, I'm at a stage in my career where I'm not going to get on TikTok, right? Like it's just not, what I do. I'm not going to, but like, I'll still provide content on Instagram and on Twitter. And, when I break stories, most of the time, before in the old days, when you started, you would like email it to your news director and they would, our Farhan Lalji reports this. Well, it's not like that. I just tweet it, right?
Right.
So it's,
Yes.
the industry's changed a lot and I'm sure I'm behind in it. So we'll see how long I last, but,
But
yeah,
credibility
you've got to be able
matters,
to function.
yeah.
You've got to be able to function on multiple platforms, and
Right.
you've got to be able to provide it differently.
Yes.
So yeah, and that requires a different level of entertainment. And, and I see some of our people, like we've got Mercer Roberto, who does a fabulous job with our Bar Down platform and Sports Center Digital. And she, you see her at events and everything's content. You can put it together and, to be young and beautiful. So
the one thing that you have with all your career, though, is you have credibility, right? And people talk to you and what you say matters, and that your opinion and your insights and your questions bring value. And I think they bring insights that I think is important. And so you just keep doing what you're doing.
The goal
it's
is
okay that you're not on TikTok.
The goal typically is, I used to say this to Bob McKenzie all the time, who recently retired from TSN. You want to get paid for who you are, not what you do.
Yes.
And in this age of influencer and content provider, that's more and more prevalent. And I think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, right? Yes. Like I'm not, like Bobby got to the point where he got paid for, like he could get off TSN and decide to be full-time social media and everybody would want his information.
Right.
And sources would still trust him the same way because he's Bob McKenzie. And, there are some people that are like that for better or for worse, right? There's a guy making, many millions on the worldwide leader in sports that I can't believe people are locked into what he says.
Yes.
It's some of it is, like I can't believe it, but he just happened to hit and it worked for him, right? So, so it just depends, right? When you get to a point of just being able to be who you are and just get paid for that, and that becomes the value.
Right, exactly. All right, my last question for you, although I could literally sit and talk to you for hours all about sports and the insights. But my last question is, what would be your words of wisdom for our audience based on everything that you've learned through your career, through your pivotal moments?
My advice to everybody has always been to set goals.
Okay.
Right? And to continuously set goals. And when you reach your goals, set the next one or have the next one ready to go. I did that earlier, and you find out as you grow that your goals might not always be related to work or career or finances. Sometimes a goal could be to have a family, right? And, and when I stopped coaching full-time, like 4 years ago, I had a certain vision of what that would look like.
Okay.
And it hasn't manifested yet because my kids have certain needs.
Yes.
And so you realize that your job is to help them reach their goals. And then eventually they're going to be out of the house and maybe I can go back to setting some goals, like for myself, right?
Yes.
But you just kind of constantly have to do that. And goals will evolve and you'll have to pivot and try to be aware of those moments when they happen and know that they mean something.
Absolutely, they do. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming today. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for the stories. And thank you for being a real, genuine reporter. One of the challenges that I'm finding these days is you just don't know who to believe in the media, in all parts of the media. And it's refreshing to know that there's people like you where you say something happens. I'm like, okay, Farhan knows what he's talking about and I believe it. And that matters. It matters. So thank you for everything you do and keep it going. Love it.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for joining me today. I could have talked to Farhan all day, just discussing sports, the media, the state of the industry, and so much more. He has a warmth with an edge. He is so easy to talk to, and yet he doesn't do the fluff piece, but instead gets to the heart of every story. You can see why he is such a trusted source for the TSN audience. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone you care about, and be sure to subscribe so you can continue to hear more pivotal stories involving one question, one turning point, one powerful story. I'll see you next week with another guest on the Leslie Hawkins podcast.